Welcome to the Akashic Library.
Have you ever seen it happen? Or maybe it's even been you, where someone seems to just completely destroy the very thing they want the most, a really good, loving relationship. It's a total puzzle. So today, let's dive into why we sometimes sabotage our own happiness. All right, to really get to the heart of this, let's follow a story. We're going to meet a couple, Sarah and Dan, and by all accounts, things are starting off just about perfectly for them. I mean, look at this timeline. They're hitting all the right notes, right? It's been 3 months. They've had a romantic trip. They've met the parents. They're about to meet the friends. Everything is pointing in a great direction. It's all systems go. But then, just as things are getting serious, just when it feels like the relationship is stronger than ever, something shifts. Out of the blue, for what seems like no reason at all, the whole thing is just thrown into crisis. So picture this. They're at a beautiful Italian restaurant. You know, the kind of place you go for a special, connected evening. The atmosphere is amazing. It's the absolute last place you'd ever expect a complete meltdown. And then, bam, out of completely nowhere, Dan just drops this accusation on Sarah. She is totally blindsided. He's saying she's being disrespectful, and just like that, the entire mood of the evening takes a nosedive. So how did this even happen? Well, it all kicks off with this really small, kind of strange accusation about his taste in books. Sarah, completely confused, tries to handle it with maturity, de-escalate. But Dan, he's just not having it. He digs his heels in, and the whole evening just crashes and burns. They end up going home in a total sulk, and the weekend plans? Canceled. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why? Why would Dan deliberately blow up a wonderful evening over something that seems so insignificant? On the surface, it looks like it was all about nothing. But as we're about to find out, it was actually about everything.
Okay, to understand what Dan is doing right now, we have to hit rewind. We've got to look at his past. Because here's the thing. The way he loves now is completely shaped by the way he was loved back then.
And this is where you see the two Dans. You've got Dan now, who's a successful, accomplished guy in a loving relationship, but underneath all that, Dan then is still there. That little boy who had a mother that was, well, she was distant, kind of uninterested. This clash between his two worlds is the key to this whole thing. So you have to ask, how did that little boy learn to survive? Well, he built up defenses. He got used to being emotionally starved. He learned to be suspicious of kindness because it was so rare. And here's the most tragic part. He actually came to feel at home in relationships that felt just as empty as that first one. It was awful, sure, but it was familiar. So now that we have that piece of the puzzle, that wound from his past, we can finally start to connect the dots. Let's decode what's really going on with this act of sabotage. And there's actually a name for this. It's called defensive isolation. It's basically a subconscious defense mechanism. When real love and affection get too close for comfort, it starts to feel threatening. So the person pushes it away to shield themselves from the pain of that love disappearing, a pain they know all too well. So when Dan accuses Sarah of not taking him seriously, what he's really crying out is, "You can't really love me." See, he's not reacting to Sarah in that moment at all. He's reacting to the emotional blueprint his mother gave him. The skepticism one person created years ago is now being aimed at someone else decades later. To really get our heads around this, there's a really powerful analogy that helps. I want you to think of emotional deprivation as a kind of starvation. Seriously, what happens to a person who has been truly, literally starved of food? See, a person who's been starving for a long time doesn't just crave a meal. In their mind, the fantasy of food becomes this perfect, incredible, idealistic feast. So when they're finally offered a normal, good enough meal, it can feel like a huge disappointment. They might even push it away. And this is exactly how someone who's been emotionally deprived can treat real, imperfect, good enough love. And that right there is the real motivation for the sabotage. It's all about control. For Dan, it feels safer to blow up the relationship himself, on his own terms, than to wait around and risk being surprised by the pain of betrayal all over again. It's a preemptive strike against future heartbreak. Wow, okay, so this all sounds pretty heavy, right? I mean, if this pattern is so deeply wired in from childhood, is there any hope? Is there even a way to heal and break the cycle? Yes, there is. And it all starts with this one fundamental insight from modern psychotherapy. You can't just separate your present from your past. To really understand how you love today, you absolutely have to understand how you were loved back then. To put it really simply, if your original blueprint for what love looks like was warped or broken, those same distortions are going to show up in your relationships today. It's not a personal failure, it's just a psychological echo. So the big takeaway here, the number one path forward, isn't about finding the perfect person or just gritting your teeth and trying harder. It's about looking backward. You have to understand your own history to free yourself from the sad, restrictive patterns it created. That awareness is the first, most crucial step to freedom. And that's what I want to leave you with. This isn't just Dan's story. This pattern is universal. So take a second and ask yourself this. What is your history asking of your present? And how might understanding that answer change everything about the way you love?
Growth often hurts because it removes illusions we depended on. Next, we'll talk about why people sabotage the very relationships they want most.